I think
So-
I might enjoy doing it electronically. I remember having to proctor some exams, and kids get pretty terribly stressed out in those exams. They
Oh,
have
yeah.
a hard time of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of requests for time with the professor right now, and discussion, and just making sure that they have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and so forth, because this is what gets them their master's degree.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember those blue books. They horrified me at the end of the term.
Happily, we don't use those anymore. I still have a pile of them lying around someplace that I never used.
No more number 2 pencils either, right?
No number 2 pencils either.
Only for schematics.
Yeah.
I still have nightmares about my college days.
Mr. Nowasaki, I don't see your smiling face here. Is there a reason?
This is John Noah. Can people see me? I can't see myself on my PC screen. I see a camera.
Yeah, that's what I
with a
just
slash
said,
through it.
John. We can't see you. It says no picture.
Yeah, I don't understand. I haven't done anything to the PC, and I was on a Zoom Fest last night, and I've been on all of our Zoom Fests, so I really don't know what's going on.
In the
you-
lower left corner, do you see your video camera, and is it crossed out?
No, it says on the lower left-hand corner, there's a button that says Stop Video, and if I hit that, then I get a cross through it, and then it goes to Start Video, and if I hit the Start Video, nothing appears.
Try the little up arrow to the right of the camera and see if maybe you selected
I've been
a
in
different
there.
camera.
No, there's only one choice I have there, something called Easy Camera.
Okay.
Is it built-in camera, or is it USB?
Yeah, it's a built-in.
Well, might have an option to turn off the camera somewhere on the keyboard or something like that.
Yeah, it's weird though. I haven't touched anything other than.
That's Windows view.
I had a similar problem. I had a similar problem one time, and I actually had to reboot the computer. That's a pain.
Yep.
Executive reset.
Yeah, executive reset, kick it.
Yeah.
When in
Well,
doubt,
I may try that as long as you let me back in again.
We will indeed, but hang in there for a little while, but while we get through the announcements, and maybe
Okay.
Bruce, if you can watch Bruce's presentation and then kick it out, you can see us all right, am I correct?
Yes, I can see all of you. I can't see myself.
Okay. So it's about 10 after. Let me just mention a few announcements, and Bruce can update me, and John can update me on these. Welcome to the third NEVAC group's virtual meeting. The next meeting that we have scheduled will be next Thursday at 7 p.m., and that's May 14th. And on May 16th is the big NEVAC Zoom Fest. And we're all hoping that that's going to turn out well. I've certainly never done this before. I don't think, has anybody participated in a Ham Fest, Zoom Fest kind of thing like this before? Okay, well, we're breaking new ground then, and I sure hope it works out. We've got a pretty good set of plans. As you know, if you're on the reflector, we have 5-minute slots that we're going to give to people, and we're going to give them in order of people requesting them. And we have a pretty good list of people who've requested 5-minute slots now. And in those 5-minute slots, you can do one of three things, or actually 2 or 3 of 3 things if you want to spend the time on that. You can sell things, you can show things for the contest, and you can give things away. And there won't be any actual transactions done on the during the Zoom Fest on the screen. So you'll have to bring a large, really well lettered, heavily lettered sign with your phone number on it, and people will call you after the Zoom Fest or after your 5-minute session to arrange a deal or a pickup. It is important that you start out your 5-minute session by saying where you are so people can judge whether they want to travel that far to pick up something. And we'll remind you of this on Saturday. And then at the end, we need to have a sign with your phone number and optionally with your email. I think that's what we all decided. Does that sound about right, Bruce?
Yep, everybody who's requested a 5-minute slot is on the current list that's out there, with the exception of Carl. I got your request, Carl. I just haven't updated yet. Over the weekend, I'll put out another email to all the members that have an email address, pretty short email compared to the last one that just says, you know, this is going to happen out here. You'd be wise to join the Zoom meeting next Thursday night to check out your equipment and make sure it functions the way you think it should. And that's about all I'm really going to say. As to the 5-minute slots, I mean, we're already covering close to an hour and a half. I know some people said, you know, they wouldn't need the whole 5 minutes. And we have other people who are already saying, if I can get a second slot, I do that. I mean, you can feel free to run for president of NEVEC if you'd like, you know, take your time up to do that. And, you know, I'll back you right up on that. So if you don't, I'm going to be, you know, convincing people they should at least be filling out a ballot and sending it in. So that's pretty much it for me. I mean, John Gibbons is taken well to this and setting up files for people if they want to put some info out there in advance. And you know, that's about all I really got to say. I was hoping to see more people coming on tonight. I see a bunch of new people, and that's great. And hopefully next week we see a bunch more. You know, if I had to guess, I hope to see at least 50 people on that Saturday. It'd be the number I'd be looking for. If we can get 50 people, then it's all worthwhile. I mean, even if we get 20 people, it's still worthwhile.
I'll settle for 49, Bruce. We don't need to nitpick on that. But
it's a deal.
Please.
Like I said, it isn't about the amount of people. You know, we could have opened this up to people that weren't members. I didn't think that would be a great choice in the middle of all this. So we've held this down to just the members. You know, we know if we only advertised on the IO group, I don't know the current number, but I'm guessing 130 of the members are members of the IO group also. And then you got current membership, I think around 330. So you have 200 members who don't use the IO group currently. And I think that's their loss. I think it's a great way to, you know, spread. So I think this is a real good opportunity. I've learned, you know, I would say that 80% of the people in the current room are people I knew well, and 20% I'm glad to see a name associated with a picture, because I see people all the time at the shows, and I go, yeah, I've seen this guy, but you know, I don't know everybody in the club, and I'm sure I know more people in the club than the majority of people. So it's all good.
Okay, Bruce, thank you very much. And thanks to John Gibbons for doing all that work. And thanks for Dick Joldis for running these things. It really has been a lot of fun. Please do spread the word in any way that you possibly can. Get some more people on here. It'll be a lot easier for people to join the Zoom Fest if they've sort of broken themselves in on one of these meetings and gotten used to it. I've muted everybody, and I think that we can turn it over to Bruce for his talk on tubes. After that, I will unmute everybody, and if you want to be unmuted, just raise your hand, I'll see you, or just go ahead and unmute yourself. You can do with either by holding the space bar down, which is like a push-to-talk button on a microphone, or I think Alt-M will also unmute you. It's either Alt-M or Control-M. So Bruce, let me turn it over to you and tell us about tubes, and we're all looking forward to it.
I hope I'm not too disappointing when I do this. I'm certainly not as slick as Bob or, So Dave, I think they both had great presentations. A bunch of us have shown a tube here or there, and I've collected tubes and bought and sold tubes for 40 years. So I'm sure there are other people in the room who know more about tubes than me, but I've got a few here, and I decided to do this because this year, 2020, is the 100th anniversary of the 01A tube. And most people recognize that as the tube who really made radio take off. So I'll show you a few of the earliest tubes I have, and we'll go down through it pretty quick so I don't bore people too bad. I got this whole whiteboard here, and so you don't have to look at me. This is the first tube I'll show, and I'll try to get it in there so you can see it. This is a DeForest Audion. Most people would recognize this as the first tube. It's got a little sticker up at the top. It says patented 1908. Had the candelabra screw base on it, leads on the top. Pretty hard tube to find, a lot of reproductions of this tube also. But it's certainly one of my favorite, and got this cool little dome I put over it and sits on a shelf very proudly. There were certainly other tubes before World War I. Bruce showed a VT2 a while back like this. This is another VT2, 1914, 1916 into the war. I mean, Western Electric used this tube into the 40s and 50s, even as a tennis ball tube like this. The earlier ones you'll find will always have a metal base like this. Nobody did a bakelite base tube until 1924. So the other one I'll show in the Western Electric line, this is a VT1, again, made for use by the military in World War I. The interesting part of the VT1 is it was one of the few prior to 1930 tubes Western Electric made that was a tubular tube. They were they very much like their tennis balls, and most of the early Western Electric tubes were tennis balls. After the DeForest Audion, the next kind of tube that came along was a tubular Audion. Looks something like this. A little label on them usually. Very difficult tube to play with. The leads were on the end like this, and even when you bought this additional base piece that could screw into a candelabra base, you had a hard time with the leads. Now, the thing I'd mention about most of these early tubes, anywhere from 100 to maybe 200 hours of use before they went bad. Some of them went bad in a few hours. So when people talk back about the Western Electrics, you have to remember the Western Electric was the telephone company, and 90+% of these tubes were used on the telephone lines and the amplifiers so that you could talk, across the country with your old crank-up phone instead of just talking to your neighbors within 2 or 3 miles. So a Western Electric tube usually carried about a 10,000 hour rating on it. And that's why still today they are so collected by people, because they were just extremely well made. There we go. They're really rugged, a lot of them. Getting toward World War I, this is a Moorhead. You can see the plate, a circular plate on the outside, the filament inside there, nice and circular. Most of your tubes that were not made by Western Electric or DeForest during this time period had what was known as a Shaw base. The base is a literally piece of tubing that was cut, similar to a piece of copper tubing that you actually had in your house for a water line. Most of them had a Shaw base on the bottom. Hopefully you can see there's an S right in the center there. Shaw was the biggest maker of these types of bases for all your early tube companies. As World War I started up, a lot of tubes were made for the military. This is a Pliatron. You can see it was made for the Navy. Again, very Shaw base on the bottom. You can still see the tubular plate up there. A lot of these were etched on the, I need to put my glasses on so I can see this. A lot of your tubes, rather than having any information on the base, would have their numbers etched right on the glass. This would go into the mid-20s before most of the work got labeled onto the base. So after World War I, a company we all know very well called RCA started in 1920 in December, and they put out what they called the Radiotron, or detector amplifier. This is a UV201. You see all the patent dates they threw at it up through 1919. The UV201, again, that right, you can see it carried, the unfortunate part about it was it carried a 1 amp filament in it. So you had to have a pretty strong power supply to be running 1 or 2 of these. But after a couple of years, they smartened up, figured out how to do the tube at a 1/4 amp, and I think life got much better. Things to notice on this box, down at the bottom, you see the W for Westinghouse. And on this side, you see the RCA label, which is not the meatball label that you're used to nowadays. That's what RCA used for a label in the early 20s. RCA made no tubes until the mid-20s at the earliest. I'd have to know the date. I'm guessing 24 before they made any of their own tubes. They were a cellar house for Westinghouse and General Electric. So you'll find a 201 from either Westinghouse or General Electric. So this is, let's see if I can tip this just right. That's kind of hard. You can hopefully see there's the meatball on there, or their early RCA label. And on the back side here, let's see if I can do this so I can see it. Very hard, actually. This is etched with a W right there for Westinghouse. So Westinghouse made this tube. It's the one that goes in this box. Down on the label, you can see back here, if I can do it, you can see the RC Radiotron listed on there. And underneath it, you can see some of my favorite words on any tube where it says, "License for amateur or experimental use only." That just makes me cringe every time I read that on an old tube. I can't think of hardly anything else in early tubes I like to see more than that. So, quick look. Okay, they're really faint, but I'll see if I can somehow tip it right there. This is a GE tube. It looks identical. As I said, GE and Westinghouse were making the tubes. I'm trying to see if I can get that etch in there, and it's just not coming through, unfortunately. But this is etched with a GE label right on the back here. You can read this one pretty good. I think everybody needs one in their collection where you can read that the stamping that was on the base of these. Now, if you look at this by now, you have a ceramic base on it. This is basically a metal piece that's nowhere near as elaborate as the Shaw bases were. And obviously these were easier to produce, and you could mass produce and run a lot more at the same time. So what else do we have here? Trying to run this along. By 1922, they changed the label for RCA, and they stopped putting the engraving on the tube, and they put on this little sticker, which 99% of the time has fallen off. But that was when, in 22, was when RCA shifted to using a sticker. And by 1923 or so, they stopped all the etchings on the tubes. It just didn't make sense to waste the time on that. And they went on to other tubes. By 22, they had changed to the 201A. Later ones here, I'll show that. And actually, I bet the last one I picked up here, yep. If you look real close, this looks very much like the other one, but that A was very important because the A told people that it went from a 1 amp tube filament to a 1/4 amp filament, so you could be running 4 201As on the same power supply. You were running a straight 201. So, real quick, change a couple things here. I'll show you this real quick. This is a piece my son used to make when he was in college and high school. I bought so many tubes and things, and all of these are duds. These are all boxes I didn't have the tube for, and he used to eBay these. They'd go anywhere from $100 to close to $200 at time, depending on how much people like the tube boxes. I am a wicked fan of tube boxes because they are just pieces of art to me, and I'm an old school designer, and I just love the looks of them. So that helped put my son through college. So every time he did that, I was saving money. So I like that. Okay, the other thing about all these 201As is these were all UV base, short pinned. They didn't do any of the long pin bases until pretty sure it was 1923. So even your early, this is around probably 1924. This is an 01A with a bakelite base. This would probably be one of your earliest ones. Has the RCA sticker on the back, still a tip tube. By 1925, RCA would eliminate all the tipping. So usually when you see a tube that's tipped, you can't guarantee it because other companies did tipping into the late 20s. But in general, your tip tubes were before 1925. And like I say, if you see a bakelite base on it, you know it's after 1924. So right after that, RCA comes out with the UX style of tube, which took off a lot better than the UVs. Your long pins on it, your pin on the back for locating when you dropped it down into a piece. Your tube box changed. All of a sudden, it says RCA Corporation on it. You don't see much on here about Westinghouse or General Electric anymore. Not that they weren't buying the tubes from them, they just didn't bother to talk about it. So by now, Western Electric is also within a year of that, 1924 or 25, they're doing bakelite bases also, and continued on with that into the 50s or so. I'll do my quick story. One of my favorites, an old friend of mine, Tom Romano, who is a member of the radio club. I know at least a few of you would remember Tom. Tom, when he came out of Korea, his first job was working for the phone company. And the first job he had at the phone company as a newbie, they sent him into a room that was solid concrete. They gave him these tubes and had him just smash them up against the wall. And he smashed tens of thousands of these tubes right here. So we all know we're talking millions of dollars nowadays, but I always enjoyed hearing that story from him. He said, Bruce, he said, that's all I did for days and days. He said, I couldn't stand it anymore. He said, you start to think it's fun and you're throwing them. He said, but after a while, you know, you're getting these pieces of glass coming back. And he said, it just wasn't as fun as you think. So,
The remaining ones wouldn't be as valuable if he didn't do that.
well, and I agree with that. So others, we saw a DV2 that came from in the DeForest line. DeForest was, I mean, an incredibly smart man, but he kind of stuck to himself about how to do things. So his tubes in the early days were all numbered with numbers that didn't spread toward the regulars. You can see eventually he'd change some of that and have a DO1A, so you knew what he was talking about there. Other tubes I enjoy. I'm done in less than 2 minutes, absolutely. This is a True Blue tube. It came in this box. It's by Brightson. They were out of Newark, New Jersey. And the tube itself was just bright blue. And Arcturus was big on blue tubes. And there was a lot of theory they were better, but they were just all blue glass, but they looked cool. The Brightson, they were nice enough to see it up there. That's your warranty on that tube. That is the identical number to the tube itself. And Brightson sold these individually. They sold them in 3s and they sold them in 5s. And the display of 5 of them together is very impressive. And I only saw that once and I should have bought it. QRS has the red top tube, and inside the tube actually has, they painted the top of it red. Now, does anybody know anything else QRS made? Because QRS was a pretty famous company during this time period. QRS made 98% of the piano rolls in old player pianos. So that was their claim to fame, but they decided to branch out and make this here. Whoop, did somebody say something? They certainly-
Yeah, my grandparents had a player piano, and most, if not all, of the rolls they had were QRS.
You betcha. And so let's see. I've got a few tubes to show. These are New England tubes. This was Champion out of Danvers, Mass. I just think the box is gorgeous. Very nice. And then they had to outdo themselves with this one here that's spirally. Pretty much the only tube I've seen where somebody didn't bother to do the entire box. They wanted you to see that tube inside. So my favorites, because John, I didn't see John here tonight. Is Mr. Comer out there? I didn't
Yes,
see
he
him. He
is.
showed his favorite.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
here. I'm here.
That's cool. Well, you showed your favorite tube, John, so I'll show you mine. This is a BiHEC tube.
That's
I'll back
great.
it off. And this is, you know, the best part of it is guaranteed BiHEC. Another tube, this don't work. You know, very, very hillbilly. Very, very out of New England, though, actually. and they would go on and sell Byheck tubes into the 30s or so. This is a later politically correct guaranteed Byheck tube, where he doesn't say another tube if it don't work. Now, Byheck tubes were sold at, I always forget this, Tiny Pond. I think a bunch of you will remember Tiny or Francis Pond. He told me years ago, when I showed it to him, he said, oh, those were at the Raymond store. And Raymond's was like a wholesaler, what do I think, like Ocean State Job Lots or whatever. And they sold tubes. Well, the Byheck tube was, with a little research done, was actually made by Champion. They actually made the tube, and I'm guessing Byheck was their second grade tube. So picture here, we'll set this up so you hopefully can see it. There's the ad for Raymond's with Byheck tube. And I don't know if you can read all the way to the bottom, but all the way on the bottom there, it says, these tubes were made by Champion Lamp Company, Danvers, Massachusetts. And that's the only ad I've ever seen for it that towards some of that mystery. So the last interesting tube thing I have is the infamous Sylvania Emergency Kit. And notice that nice work of the word urgent. I thought that was awesome, but I think most of you know I worked for Sylvania. This is the only one of this set I've ever seen. It has a SX245, an XX280, and a couple SY224s. Now, I think everybody knows the 280s, the rec tube, and the 245s, the audio out. These are the tubes that always go. But I bought this on eBay probably 20 years ago, and I can't say as I've seen another one like it. So again, those are some of my favorite tubes, a little interest, and we'll get back on to fun stuff other people are doing. Okay?
That's wonderful. Wonderful, Bruce. Thank you very much.
Sorry, one
And,
more thing.
yeah.
I'll do it if I can, Tom.
Sure.
Best book ever written on tubes right here. You want to know about the history of tubes? This is an incredible book. And I highly recommend it. I don't recommend people read anything, but this is a great book. There are other good books. Tube Lore by Sibley. This is an incredible collection of information. It is incredibly difficult to find anything you're trying to find in it, but the guy's an absolute genius and did a lot of good work. So I recommend this #1, and if you've read it all, want to know more, go here. Okay, I'm really done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. That's just great stuff and interesting. I wonder if you have one of the famous Phil Weingarten audions.
I do not. I do not collect anything that's a reproduction. And
I
it
wonder
doesn't mean
if-
it isn't good.
I wonder if the people here know about Phil Weingarten. Hold your hand up if you know Phil Weingarten. Phil Weingarten was the most infamous of all antique radio counterfeiters. And not only did he counterfeit antique radios, but he also counterfeited DeForest Audions and what was it, Marconi coherers. He made a really neat little Marconi coherer, and he sold these things for incredibly high prices. And I knew a few people who knew him personally. I met him a couple of times. He had a downstairs shop in Canal Street in New York City, and everybody said he kept a loaded Luger under his cushion in his living room in his sofa because there were so many people who were furious with him. He would sell radios for $2,000 and $3,000 in days when $2,000 or $3,000 would buy you a very, very nice car, and they would turn out to be fakes. He would also borrow parts from people to make reproductions, and he would give people back the reproduction and not the part. So he was deadly. And I wonder if you'd be interested. I have about a 20-minute talk that I do on Phil Weingarten, showing all of the many of the reproduction quote counterfeit radios that he made and his audions. He also was infamous for making counterfeit telegraph keys. So it might be an interesting talk if you would like to hear me, but I don't want to force myself on anybody. Let me turn open the microphone. I'll unmute everybody if you have further questions for Bruce, and then I'll go down the list and see if people would like to say anything. Meanwhile, I'll unmute everybody, and that is done now. Okay, so go ahead and make any comments that you wish.
Very nice talk, Bruce.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. That was great.
Yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah, they
Thanks,
said
Bruce.
a few things about those tubes. Do you have any that had 3 pins?
Yes, Spartan, I think, did it for like a rectifier, if I remember right.
Yeah, I've heard something like some of the earliest tubes had what they called the Navy base, and it had 3 pins, and the 4th pin was done through the bayonet on the socket.
Yep. I'll admit I don't have any. I have seen either 2 or 3 pin Spartan tubes that would have been later into the 20s. You know, finding tubes that are pre-World War I, pretty difficult task nowadays, you know?
Yeah.
This is
Most of
been
the ones
over.
I've seen were on that.
Yep.
Most of the ones I've seen were on that uv201.com.
Yep.
A lot of them on there.
You know, in the past 40 years, I've been through in excess of 1 million tubes, probably closer to 2 million tubes. So, you know, I bought them from guys in the club, from people that had shops that were out, and I bought them in bulk and gone through them and collected what I liked, sold some on eBay. I think most of you know what Tom sells at the shows come from me. I give them to him because he repairs my sets for me and gives me a good price on that. So I don't have room in my basement for, you know, 1 million tubes. I have room for, you know, 1,000 of my favorites. So.
Do you have any original 300Bs, Bruce?
An original what?
Western Electric 300B?
300B. I have sold them. I don't have one. You know, an audio tube I'm not going to use, and unfortunately, I'm not going to. Well, hold on one second.
Yeah, they also made a 300A.
That would make sense.
How about
I don't see many of them, I don't think.
Oh,
This is a matched pair of Western Electric 300Bs. Now, you'd be excited about that, and I just told Tom I didn't collect reproductions. These are the Japanese reproductions of Western Electric 300Bs. They're still right up there in the top 300B you could buy. You're probably looking at about $2,000 right here. So I do have these, but I have had original ones made by Western Electric. This is about the best you're going to do nowadays without spending money way beyond what I spend on a car. So
they're ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
Ridiculous is a good word for it.
It is.
I don't think it quite covers it, frankly.
I mean, they're for audio guys. Now you're looking at a guy that's wearing 2 hearing aids here. You know how much better it can be than something else. Now, that doesn't matter to me. I mean, so
they were originally designed for telephone use. I mean, they were probably amplifiers that ran on a set of 300Bs for decades upon decades.
I heard they were used in movie theaters.
Yes, yes, they were.
Well, let me welcome Mr. Mike into our group. Mike, as you know, runs the Deerfield Ham Fest, and it's interesting to have him join us because I think he'll be interested in our virtual Ham Fest that we're going to have called the Zoom Fest. Mike, are you with us and tuned in? Over.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfectly, perfectly. We're planning on a Zoom Fest, as you know, on Saturday. What is it, the 16th, Bruce? And we're going to see how that works out. We're going to have one more session like this next Thursday, and then we're going for the Zoom Fest. We're going to divide it up into 5-minute intervals for sellers, showers, and givers away. I'll talk to you about all that later. Anybody else have any more comments for Bruce? And then I wonder if you guys would put up with me if I did a presentation on the most infamous counterfeiter of antique radios ever, maybe the only counterfeiter. And actually,
Oh, I'm sure there were others.
Yeah, definitely
give me
like
a
to see
hands
that.
up. I don't want to foist
At least-
myself on you.
I'm
At
in.
least some of them use their powers for good. I will say that.
Okay, and interestingly enough, we'll see that his counterfeits sold for much more after he had died than he was able to sell them for while he was alive. It's a fun story. I'll do that next time if you all okay with that.
Okay.
And let me run
Goes
down
for
the
painters,
list.
too.
Comments? Go ahead.
Well, Bruce, are you a member of the Tube Collectors IO group?
I was at one time, and then I couldn't be a member of everything, and I kind of, when I was president of this club, I focused there. I dropped my membership with the AWA and the Tube Collector group, and tend to try to be a little bit of a loner nowadays. So.
There you go. Yeah, I signed up for it, so it's interesting to watch some of the pathology going on over there.
Oh, it is.
But it's probably not going to live for me, but it's fun to look at a little bit.
I have another question for everybody, and that is, how long would you like me to keep the recordings of these sessions up on my website? Bruce, do you think that the club wants to put it on their website? Each one is about 800 megabytes, maybe almost a gigabyte. So far, I guess it's worked out okay for me to upload it, and sooner or later, I'd like to take the first one down, just keep feeding into them. Do you think that that's something the club wants to archive, or do we let them die?
I would pass that question to John and see if we have space on the IO group that we could put that so anybody could look at it at any time. John, you out there?
Yeah. Let me have a look, because I actually you said Tom is what, 800 meg? You said.
Yeah, if you take a look at the last meeting email, it gives you the link to that. It's an MP4 file. I'm not good enough at this stuff to know how to shrink it down, say, to a YouTube format, but maybe you could do that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's another possibility. Let me see what I can do about posting those. If nothing else, maybe we still have the YouTube site, whether I could transfer it over there. And at least have some archive. It strikes me that maybe we would keep a rotating set if possible. And we could just see how it goes based on space. But let me look on YouTube, and it's probably the more viable option. But also look at Groups IO and see what we can do there too. But I still have the link, because I have your email from the last one. I'll go hunt that down and take a peek and see what we can do, and I'll play around.
Okay, very good. Very good. Any other general comments before I run down the list for individual comments? Okay, the first person that I have checking in is Jim Liguri. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the group tonight? We're going to try and keep it a little bit short, I think, because we're already up to almost an hour. We'll call it 45 minutes. And I think probably an hour and a half is a reasonable end point for meetings like this. Jim, are you around? Okay.
Yes, I'm
Bruce?
here. Everyone
Okay.
can hear me, I hope.
Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
last week I enjoyed Dave's presentation. Hear me okay? Anybody?
Can
Keep talking.
0172 mute your phone? I think it's a *6,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, just I enjoyed Dave's presentation last week on the Emerson with the curtain burner. And just 2 days earlier, I had finished one very similar, an Emerson 108, or also known as, I guess, similar to a U5A. And the person who sent it to me said that he thought the power cord was no good, so he replaced it with a regular 2-wire power cord. And either way, it didn't work. Little did he know that it was a curtain burner. But Jeanette did a great job. She installed about a 25-watt 100-ohm resistor inside the chassis for me. She did a great job and plays just fine. That's it. Next.
Great.
Okay, Bruce Burgess, over to you. Second to check in.
Yeah, thank you there, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm wondering, following up on Bruce Phillips' talk, I think we've all had octotubes in which the nomenclature has rubbed off the glass. Is there any logical way to determine what that tube is, what the ID is, when you can't see the identification anymore?
I have an answer. I saw it was done on YouTube by an English gentleman. And so we've all had them, and all these different tricks. People try to put it in the freezer, give it some hot breath, try to create something that it would contrast against. So what this fella had found out is he took a small LED flashlight from his wife's purse. He takes the tube, he shines the light, and then turns it. And from what looks like a clear glass tube that's lost any sense of what might have been stamped on there, voila, it's a beautiful thing. And it works quite regularly. I've experimented with it. Won't work with a regular flashlight. It must be an LED, and a little pocket-sized one is a beautiful thing. If you go on to Google and just do LED, you could probably find it with the right choice words in there. But it was just one of those things. It's right under your nose, and unless somebody tells you, how would you stumble on that?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. Back to Nat.
Yeah, I've got a solution that sometimes works too. It's not quite as high tech though.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you put them in the freezer.
Oh.
Yeah.
When you take them out of the freezer, sometimes you can read them.
Sometimes they crack from the freezing, huh?
Believe it or not, you can also rub them on the back of your neck. Well, it gets a little static, and that'll work. But I'm interested in trying Paul's out. I've certainly done the freezer, do that all the time, and I've certainly used a flashlight, and I'm trying to think if I've used an LED one, and I'm not sure I have. So that's next.
Somebody had sent me that YouTube video, and I may still have a link to it somewhere. If I do, I'll put it in the IO.
Yeah, I'm interested. How? What do you mean by turn it? Like you try to light the markings up from the back or something?
Well, it's not really very scientific, Adam. Essentially, what he does is he holds it pretty much right up against the tube, and you just turn it. You experiment. You just 9 times out of 10, you do get a glint of what it was. You could see.
Yeah, I'm guessing it has something to do with the directionality of the beam or something like that, shining
Well,
through the
or the
glass.
characteristics of the light. But the funny thing was, too, of course, this guy who's, a serious electronics enthusiast is sitting there with this little pocket, doorbell size, keychain thing. It's got a floral pattern on it. Looks like his wife got it at the local community knitting group. It didn't really mesh with the rest of the stuff on his bench, but I think it was more entertaining that way.
Yeah. As long as it works.
Let me move along and see if Rob KE8UW has anything you'd like to tell us this evening.
Well, just thank you for the presentation. It was excellent.
on the tubes, and I also will look into those books, and I'm looking forward to this counterfeiter. Sounds like a great way to make a buck. That's
Thank
it.
you. John Gibbons, you're next on the list.
Okay, 1 second. This will be a laugher for you guys, but I'll show you a piece of since we are a vintage electronics club, I can offer you this Panasonic NXF4. You can see this. I'll pull it away.
Oh, boombox.
Boombox. Now,
mini boombox, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this is the classic case of if you own something long enough and you hold on to it long enough, it becomes a classic, and thus it falls into our group's charter. Now, what's interesting, it's a very simple story. I've had this since new. When I was a senior in college, at the time I had this pretty respectable, and I regret getting rid of it, Panasonic monaural, boombox. It was taller. It was black, and it's from the late 70s, like 78, and it had great sound. Now, granted, it was mono, and of course, as a kid, you kind of like to have something that's more than mono, but it had great sound and great reception. It even had a little meter to a BU meter on it, so I thought it was actually pretty good. So regrettably, I gave it away to Goodwill, but anyway, I bought my aunts had given me Christmas money, and so I went for Christmas in 1984, and I bought this. And the neat thing about this is actually it was great because I wanted something that was relatively portable instead of these big monster things. This has these nice little equalizer buttons you can see right here. Or a whole bunch, where you can actually set, enjoy some of the different sounds. It's just very simple as a cassette deck. It works perfectly. I've had this since new. I just need to tidy up just a little. It's almost in perfect shape. I just need to dust it off. But you just don't see these that often, and I'm not going to get rid of it mostly for sentimental reasons, no other reason. But I thought you might get a laugh out of it because this is the newest thing in my collection. It's the only Japanese radio I own, but it's fun. It's a nice little system.
Very good. Thank you, John.
Everything old is new again, as they say,
That's right. That's right.
Whoever's on their cell phone from the 781 number, if you'd mute that cell phone, would be 9172. That's Mike. You know how to mute that, Mike?
Yeah, that's me.
I'll mute
it. It keeps coming
yes,
across and blocking him out on the screen. I don't mean to be rude, but it's...
I believe it's *6.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. And
you've done it, Mike. We appreciate that.
Let me turn it over to John Noah. What do you have for us this evening?
I'll be right back.
Oh, you're muted. Hold on. I'll unmute you. Trying to unmute you. Oh. There you go.
Okay. Are we there? Yep.
Yes.
So I was intrigued by it. Somebody showed some artwork or an ad or something for one of their radios. And so that got me looking around, and I don't know how well this is going to show up here. I'll try. This is an ad for the Admiral Triple Thrill. You remember a couple of weeks ago, I showed kind of a monster that's in the dining room. And this was a very fancy ad that I was able to find. And for the right price, if I can move this the right way, or I'll just read it because it's hard to see. But in 1948, for the right price of only $549.50, you could have this Triple Thrill combo console that was a TV and a 2-speed record changer and an AM/FM radio. And it just so happens that it matches my blonde cabinet Triple Thrill that I actually picked up at an automotive swap meet. I was at the Thompson Speedway in Connecticut looking for car parts for one of my antique cars. And I came around the corner and I saw this piece of furniture. And of course, I was drawn to it and started pulling on these weird knobs. And the radio portion opens like a bread box. And the 2-speed turntable is actually an interesting thing in that it's 2 speeds and it's also 2 tone arms. The 78 RPM record player is a record changer because obviously you only get 1 song per side. So you can stack up your 78s. But then in the back, there is another tone arm that's a lightweight tone arm for the other speed, which is 33 1/3 for the LP that would have multiple songs on a side. So it's 2 speeds, but it's also 2 tone arms. So you've got 2 speeds on the turntable, you have AM and FM on the radio, and then the final door opens up this way, and then you get the television in between. And I saw this monstrosity at the show and it was $20. So how could I not drag it all the way home and fix it? Especially when I got, and now I found the ad for it. So it's got a piece of plexiglass on the top and I put the ad underneath. And I never tried to go out and get a calculator or something. Maybe somebody in the group knows. $550 in 1948. What would something like that be in today's dollars?
A lot.
Yep.
Thank you.
$6,000, John.
It's about $5,800, almost $6,000.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I'll let it go for 5 if anybody's interested.
Dollars, your wife would
John
be
can
happy,
put you in his
right?
presentation.
Thank you. Thank
What's
you,
that?
John. Thank you, John. Let me move
Sure.
along to.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just a quick question. I'm being a snoop. Is that a Telefunken 5550 sitting on top of it?
It's the one it's the last big honker from like 64 or 65. It has all the EL 95s in it.
Yeah, that's a nice one. That's a keeper.
Yes, it is. With the teak
Yes,
door that folds
exactly.
down.
With the,
Yep.
Yes. You have to do in show and tell at some point. That's awesome. Both pieces are awesome.
Let me turn the microphone over to Nels Anderson. How are you doing, Nels? Can you, I guess I have to unmute you. Unmute. Okay, you're on, Nels.
There we go. Yeah, this is the first one of these I joined in. I thought it'd be interesting to learn something about tubes. So thank you, Bruce, for the presentation and the other stuff. I don't really have anything to contribute myself this evening, but glad to be able to join in and see everybody. So back to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Joe Devonshire, how about you? Anything for us tonight? Joe, you are on. Go for it.
Let's see. Yeah. All right, here I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Okay, good. So hopefully, let's see. How does this? I think you can see this. This is the new and improved clear tone. What this is, it's a loop antenna. And inside, well, the loop is behind the label. Okay, and inside, this is all there is. So it's not supposed to come apart, but this is the way I found it. And I'd rather not do any more damage to it, so I haven't put it back together. But the label, it's all there. Some of it's flaked off over the years. How's that? Lighting's not that good. Sorry about the lighting. And then this is the top. You have your terminals up here, 3 screws for the capacitor underneath and a dial. Okay, there you go.
Very good, Joe. Thank you very much. Let me turn it over to Tony. Are you here, Tony? I don't see you on here. Okay, I think he may have checked out. How about you, Len? Are you with us? Len?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, anything for us tonight?
Well, this is the first one I've done, and I'm going to keep doing it. It was really very good, and I want to thank Bruce for his presentation. And I'm looking forward to seeing Weingarten. I think he counterfeited Massey keys at one time. I'd like to see those.
Yeah. I actually have one. I'll bring it out of hiding and show it to you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, very good. Russ, are you with us, Russ? Let me see.
Yep, I am.
Okay,
Just,
good.
hopefully you can see. This cute little radio just arrived the other day. It's a Silvertone 8000. But what I really wanted to show you the first sign that things were maybe not so good was the power cord attached like that. And underneath, you can see equal quality work. Lots of electrical tape, things just kind of hanging, things all tied in kind of funny. So it'll be fun to pull it all apart and make it a little bit better. Yeah.
Sort of point to point to point wiring, huh?
Yes. Must have been an electrician. I don't know, but there it is.
Surprised you didn't wire not that power cord right to the speaker and get it over, you know?
That would do it. So yeah, that's it. Not really probably an impressive radio, 4 tubes, but well, always fun to play with.
Okay, Russ, thank you very much. I'm going to play net control here, turn it over to Hugh. I'll unmute you, I think, or you'll unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I think if people mute themselves that you're not able to unmute them. So just be
okay.
aware of that. But anyway, I haven't done too much. I'm a member of one of the BMW car club special interest groups, and somebody was having trouble with a noisy car radio, so I spent some time looking up the schematics and trying to guide him on, finding the alternator whine, because I got tired of watching the car guys trying to figure it out for him. So anyway, I gave him a bunch of troubleshooting procedures, so hopefully he gets successful with that. On the price of the triple radio thing there, it's interesting that electronics is one of the things that has defied inflation. In 1970, $1,000 color TV was a great color TV then, and $1,000 color TV is a great color TV now. So that's just a little interesting thing about us and our electronics. I had one thing to show, speaking of vintage things. So in the 60s, my father built me this, he worked for Raytheon and built me this train transformer. Has a variac and a 6.3 volt, filament transformer for the lights, and 0 to 24 for the Lionel train. And, there's the beautiful construction inside. Over the years, I sort of hacked in a rectifier bridge so I could get DC out of it. And then I think I took that out, but you can see a little of my rough handiwork here, probably drilling the holes with a Phillips screwdriver. But anyway, that was my show and tell for today.
That's great. Thank you, Hugh. And Bob Harris, you're on next. Can you unmute you? Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. First, I wanted to say thank you to Bruce for a good presentation. It was enjoyable and learned a lot. A couple of weeks ago, I showed a radio that came with 3 sides, and I made a new side. So I have another one I wanted to show you real quick. It's a Philco 48250. And this is what it looks like. And I think you can see it's not real easy to rescue that. So I wanted to make something good out of it. So I have the radio here and I'll show you. So this is what it looks like now.
Nice.
And obviously you can see I bought an acrylic case and put it into the case. And I did that because I wanted to get some value out of the radio, perhaps use it for educational purposes. There are a lot of folks who, at least young kids, I mentored 2 young boys. They don't know what a tube radio is. So I think a lot of younger folks have never seen one. And let me stand up here. It actually works.
Frames, frames, frames. That's we have a granite photo. Want to make that special image pop? Come to my store and choose from our large selection of ready-made frames. Need a custom mat? No problem. I can make.
One of the challenges in making this was that the dial is attached to the cabinet. You can see where it's attached to the cabinet right there. And I didn't want to be cutting an acrylic case and mounting the dial, so I made a wood frame. So the wood frame for the dial is actually mounted inside the radio now. And you can see the dial. Oops, wrong knob. I don't know if you can see that. It works. You can see it going back and forth. The other challenge in making this, you have to be careful about drilling the holes. I used a wood drill. I think you can probably use plastic drills. There's a couple of cracks here. But other than that, I thought it came out pretty well and just wanted to show it to you. The other challenge is mounting the antenna. I don't know if you can see it. Well, there's a loop. You can see there's a loop in the back, and you have to make a plastic mount in order to mount that. It's stuck on the inside of the cabinet when you get the radio. So that's about it. Thank you all.
Thank you,
That's a
Bob.
good
Over
prison
to-
radio, Bob. Nobody could smuggle in a file.
I've seen a
I'm
lot
sorry,
of.
say again?
That would be a good radio for a prisoner. You know, you had a loved one in the state pen. You could bring that in, and you wouldn't be. They could look in. They wouldn't see any files or knives or pistols that you were smuggling.
Just need to etch the prisoner's name and number. The number on the thing.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. I'm
Question
advertising a
for
prison.
Bob.
Yeah.
Bob?
Yes.
Did you ever see the Hallicrafter radios in the 50s that they put in they put them in the hardware stores and things? They when they first changed over from point to printed circuit boards, Hallicrafter did them in a clear plastic case so that people could see what was inside the radio and the printed circuit board instead of the old point-to-point wiring. So they're out there. They actually did a couple different variants of it. Hallicrafter was the only one I've ever really seen that did. You ever see one?
No, I haven't, but I appreciate you telling me about that. If I see one, I'll try and pick it up. I mean, I'll keep my eyes open. I wouldn't have even thought to look for something like that. Thank you.
I'll show it to you next week, but yours is equally as good, if not better.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the positive feedback.
Okay, let me turn it over to Ken. Ken Silvestri, can you hear us okay?
I can, Tom. Can you hear me?
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first, this is kind of silly, but I found this at Home Depot a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, it looks German to me. I don't know. The plants grow really well in it, though.
Nice.
German or British?
It could be British. They're both homely.
Yep.
But I turn this light on a little more. Something else that's radio related, not really a radio. This is during World War II. We had a coastal defense system to monitor any enemy activity off the coast, and this came out of one of those monitoring stations from the Coast Guard. And it's a antenna switch. It's dated April 6, 1942 on the plate, made for the U.S. Coast Guard. It weighs about 20 pounds. It's made of ceramic and stainless steel and cast iron. It looks like it will outlive my great-grandchildren. So I thought that was pretty interesting. You lift the lever, and you can switch between contacts on this insulated post and there, or hang it in the air. Has anybody ever seen anything like this before?
Oh, that's cool.
It's a beauty.
Nothing quite that neat. I just have one of those bird coax switches. It just looks like a big knob that you turn around.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. And the other thing that's cool is, you guys may have seen this before. It's a Zenith. I can't tell if this is in view or not. Tom, I have you on the screen. It's a Zenith semi-portable radio from 1948. And when you push this button, it pops open, and the antenna comes up and automatically turns on.
That's cool.
Yeah, it runs on AC or batteries. And I haven't restored it yet, but it's in good physical condition. So it's coming up soon on my restoration projects. You shut it off, you put the antenna down, close the little doors here, and take it away.
Very nice.
That's great, Ken. Thank you. That's both of those beautiful items. George, over to you, George.
Yeah, hi. I think I'm gonna probably pass. I didn't prepare anything for today, but I've got a couple ideas for the next couple of times.
Okay, we'll look forward to it. Thank you. Gary, you were the next to check in. Anything for us tonight?
I don't have anything to show. I don't have it with me, but I can tell you what I have been working on briefly. To me, it's a little bit of an interesting set. It's a Hallicrafters WR2500. It's a vintage 1964. They made two versions, a WR2000 in a metal cabinet and a WR2500 in a walnut cabinet. And nice radio. It's not little. It's not maybe just a little on the smaller side of medium-sized table radio. But it's kind of nice in that it has a large speaker. It has a transformer operated chassis, and it has slide wheel tuning, but the flywheel tuning, so it has a nice feel. Just a simple 5-tube circuit, and it covers AM, FM, and 2 shortwave bands. And so it's basically like a moderate performer on shortwave because it's basically an all-American 5 type circuit for the shortwave bands in AM. But it seems to have reasonable sensitivity. To get it going, I just had to replace the filter capacitors. It was a triple section, and I replaced it with 3 individual ones underneath the chassis. And at that point, everything was working except the bottom half of the FM band. So I put a new 6C9 tube in it, which is a front-end FM tube, and everything worked fine now. The first time I'd run into that tube with 10-pin tube socket, a 10-pin tube, which I thought was interesting.
Compactron, I think.
What?
So I don't know. I'm not sure if they made 10-pin compactrons or if they were only the 12-pin ones were classified under that name, by GE.
I think this is just, it looks exactly like a 9-pin tube, size-wise.
Yep.
It has a 10th pin in the middle.
Yeah, decal base or whatever they call it.
What was the name again?
I said, so I don't know if they call that a decal base, 10-pin. I mean, they were, after octal, you've got novel, then decal, then dual decal. That's the 12-pin base used for the compactron tubes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Anyway, the set looks good. Actually, it's pretty good. I didn't align it. I only just recently found service info on it. I wasn't going to touch those coils unless I knew what turning something actually did. I have the info now, but it's looking pretty decent. The only thing I noticed is the power transformer runs warm, warmer than I would have expected. And I did some checking, and it seems okay. The B plus isn't loading down the set any more than it should. The filaments all seem to be okay. The current draw on the primary side of the transformer is only a little bit above normal. Like I think that they said it was rated at 0.47 amps, and it's drawing like 0.52. So I think maybe it was just designed to run hot. And I had done some research, and I had heard that some other national radios at the time, communications receivers, their power transformers ran warm, warm enough that people today in this era were commenting on it. And I remember as a kid looking in the back of my parents' 1960s Zenith TV set, 23-inch black and white, rectangular picture tube, when the repairman was working on it, not me. And the power transformer had these big, huge fins on it. The two fins on each side were probably as big as the power transformer itself. So that one was certainly running warm if it needed them. So the only thing I got left to do with this radio was once I got the service info, I found there's one more electrolytic cap that I wasn't aware of. And even with the service info, I had trouble finding it, seeing it, even when I knew where it was. But it's in a little 10 mic, 25 volt cap in the FM detector circuit. So when I replace that, I think this set will be fine. And I'm kind of assuming that the power transformer was designed to run on the warm side in this set. So
Okay, Gary.
any comments on that, I'd appreciate.
Thank you very much, Gary. Let me turn it over to Paul. We've got about 6 more people here. Paul, do you have anything for us tonight?
I got a couple of quick things for you. This I will show the group, this esteemed group. I'm sure you know what these are. But I once showed this to somebody who, to me, was sort of a radio mentor. I mean, he had it all going. Went to a shop one day and I said, "Did you ever have one of these?" And he looked at it and he wasn't quite sure what it was. And he says, "Well, what do I do with it?" So we pulled out an AA5 and we put the Turk behind it and he tuned it a little bit and he got a big smile and he said, "Oh, this is cool. Inductive coupling, I love this." Well, if you are having a reception problem and you don't have the ability to have a big antenna and you like to DX, this is a Turk. I don't know how many of the group are familiar with them. It is a good investment. You pick them up used for 20, 25 bucks, you get a new one for maybe 40. It takes your 5-tube set and makes it a 6-tube set. It takes the 6-tube. It definitely works. You can null out a ton of static. It's a really neat little thing if you like to sit there and you don't have a big rig and you don't have a lot of room, but say you want to bring a small set upstairs and find, you have a set that's not quite able to get your favorite station, pick up one of those, and chances are you would probably be able to pull it in. And then, I wonder, why do I even mess around with that? Because I had emailed John Gibbons the other night, and I said, I was rediscovering, my schedule has changed a little bit. So I'm looking back and listening to a little shortwave and all tonight. So this is my Grundig Satellite 400, which I had picked up. And my comment to John, and I'll make it in front of the group, was it's probably one of the more intelligent investments I ever made when I was in my 20s, that I didn't fritter away. I picked this up from national radio at the time, and have to tell you, this thing is great on FM. It's awesome on AM for DXing. Made in Portugal, albeit, it's a Grundig that was, I guess they had a plant in Portugal where they made some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I've done absolutely nothing to it other than a little lubrication, and the thing plays like an absolute champ. You ever want to have a nice, 5-6 pound set that you can pull in Chicago, up in Boston, see one of these, pick it up. They're worth the money. So
yeah, it's a nice radio.
Other than that, I've been trying to listen to a little shortwave. I still get Radio Havana, and I picked up a station the other evening, and I wasn't quite sure what the content was. It was tough coming in. They gave an address for QSL in Thailand. I didn't know if it was a religious program. I don't know if anybody's ever picked up any shortwave from Thailand, but if it rings a bell or you know what it is, you can shoot me an email, put it in the IO group. I was curious to find out what it was. Couldn't get it good enough to get a read on it, though,
Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated. Any questions for Paul? Okay, Larry.
Those Grundigs are excellent radios. I have a Satellite 700, which was the last set of theirs they made in Portugal. And really, if you ever have problems with that one, you just talk to Ross Hochstrasser. He knows quite a bit about those things.
Let me turn it over to Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Okay, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. Just making sure. All right. Hi, everybody. Really enjoyed your presentation, Bruce. And I wasn't going to show this today, but this is my answer to Bob Harris's Philco. I built this when I was in high school. I'll show you the back of it. It's It's an All-American 5 broadcast, AM broadcast circuit, and little ferrite antenna coil and antenna in the back. Also has a wire antenna you can hook up if you want more sensitivity. The IF transformers and everything are on the bottom. Probably can't see it too well. I see one of them. Yep. Maybe both. But the cabinet came from my mom. She was an artist and she did mostly painting, but she was doing some project with a plexiglass cube. And when she was done with it, I said, you know, I could use that for a radio cabinet. And she gave it to me and I did. So like I said, that's my answer to Bob's set. And one more thing, with the talk on tubes tonight, this is something I've had for a while. And I'd be curious if anyone knows what its application was. It's the number on it is something that means nothing to me. Jan, yeah, I know what Jan is, Joint Army Navy. CFT-8002R. And it's an external anode tube. This is a big thin heat sink around it, copper and glass, and it's got 6 pins on the base. It's not as good as a Western Electric tube, Bruce, because it says 1,000 guaranteed service life, 1,000 hours. It's made by Federal Telephone and Radio. This little blue tag here says FTR, Federal Telephone and Radio. And it's an external anode tube. If I didn't say that already, you know, the heat sink is in thermal contact with metal cylinder, which has to be the anode. But I'd really like, I haven't been able to find any information on it. I'd like to know its specs, if it's a triode, tetrode, or pentode, and what its application was, if anyone knows.
Can you read me that number again?
Number?
Yeah, the number is
Said CFT 8002.
yeah, CFT-8002R.
Okay. Found a couple of things on it here, but
Okay, Larry, let me move
Transmitting
along.
triode air cooled.
yeah, it just says what I found. It just military stock Federal Radio Telephone transmitting tube. That's all it says.
Okay.
Can't find anything else right now.
Well, thanks for looking.
Just go to Google, type in 8002R tube, and information will come up.
Okay, I'll do a search
Transmitting
on that.
triode, air cooled.
Thank you,
Triode,
Larry.
well, that's nice to know.
Thank you, Larry.
Yep.
Let me
Air-cooled triode.
let me move along to Dick Joldis.
1,000 hours is probably a pretty good rating for one of those, I think.
Dick, take over if you will.
38 amp,
Okay.
16 volt, 38 amp filament.
Nope.
Okay.
I'll take a lot of power.
All right, just something totally ridiculous here, and I hope this is going to show up. This is something I just couldn't pass up. I don't know if anybody's ever seen one of these. It says on the case, standard. And since everybody had their monster radios a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't have this upstairs, I figured I'd bring it up and show it off. I got this at an antiques mall for $10 a while back. It's because I couldn't resist. It's the tiniest AM radio I've ever seen in my life. This thing came out. This is these were made in Japan, circa 1965, 67, 70, something like that. You can see the total size on this thing. It does not work at this point. It does power up. It uses, of all things, ridiculously large button batteries that I finally found online that were not exactly easy to locate, and I paid stupid amounts of money to get these things from a local company or a remote company over in China. It does power on. At this point, I could get a small amount of static out of it, but it doesn't really do anything at this point. You can see the controls over here and everything. And it actually, on the other side, very, very tiny down here at the bottom, has a headphone jack. which is not showing up very well, but there it is. I did some checking into this thing. Apparently they develop a lot of problems because they're the early transistors, and also they're fairly delicate because I guess they had like a metal deposited, almost like soldered into place trimming capacitor that was prone to being destroyed. And there are apparently a couple of guys out there that restore these things. At some point, I may contact one and ask him what kind of insane sum of money it would take to get it done. But it's probably not even worth it. But just amusement value, and from the monster set that was shown off a couple of weeks ago to this ridiculous little thing. And that's it for me tonight.
Thank you very much, Dick.
I can repair those things.
Let me turn it over to Carl. Carl, are you with us? I'm not getting audio. Should be getting audio, but we're not.
You getting the audio now?
Yes, okay.
Okay, very good. All right, I had a pair of headphones on that also are meant to use with the phone. Bruce, thank you very much for your presentation. Enjoyed it a lot. And I don't know, I'm probably gonna lose a friend in this, but Joe Devonshire, question for you. Can you unmute for a second?
I can hear you clear as a bell, Carl. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to know, I assume that's your 160 meter antenna you just showed us?
Not quite.
All right, I'm all done. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
This
Over
is
to you,
laughing.
Roy. Roy, are you with us, Roy?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Came in a bit late, so I only caught part of Bruce's presentation, but it was very enjoyable. Love coming here and just seeing all the show and tell. Don't have anything tonight, but looking forward to next Thursday.
Good, Roy. Thank you for joining us. Howard, you are next. I'm doing this in order of people who checked in, so we're down to 2 people. You're next, Howard. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody. Not sure if you can hear me, but
yes,
Yeah, you're good.
great. Just a couple things. I really like the sets that Bob Harris and Larry Sendry put together using the Lexan, and seeing how learning sessions at Navy were such a success. If it wouldn't be too much trouble, I'd love to see those sets so that we can exhibit them at the next Navy, perhaps, so that people can actually see what the innards of one of these looks like without having to actually go in the back of one of them. Like I said, if it's not too much of an inconvenience, I think it's something that would go along well. But with regards to the Turk antenna that Paul brought, there was an article, and I want to say 2012 or 2013 in Radio News. I want to say it was Charlie Perkett that actually wrote the article or the review on it. It was just a review of it. If I can find it, I'll send a link out to this group as far as which issue it is. But there was actually a review of it that somebody did. Don't have much to share tonight, but I did want to show you in the spirit of the raffles for next year. I have this. I don't know if you can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay.
That's
This is an
beautiful.
RCA that came from the Joe Mandrano collection. This was a collection that basically the gentleman said he was a member of the club and he moved into a smaller building, needed to get rid of it, and said, they're free, but you have to take everything. Multiple trailer loads of really not too valuable consoles. This radio, I didn't know how good it would come out because it was really covered in a thick, cruddy something or other. Anyway, on our I/O groups, there was a lot of talk about cleaning Bakelite. And I'm going to tell you what I did with this one, and I've done this for others. I use the old version, and I say the old version because it has a Spags price tag on it, the old version of Armor All. Somewhere back in the 90s, they changed their formulation, and the new Armor All doesn't work. The old stuff, if you can find something that's been hanging around for 30 years, makes a great release agent. Sometimes it polishes up the Bakelite nice, but sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it really didn't, but it made a great release agent and got whatever was on it off. And it was just a few coats of linseed oil that I kind of buffed in, and this actually came out beautiful. So that's going to be my donation radio for the raffles at Navy 4.
Wow.
One other interesting thing about that particular radio is that it's an All-American 5. However, it has a ballast, and the only purpose of the ballast is to drop the voltage for the pilot light. So unlike some of the All-American 5s that come on very bright and then kind of dim down as the set heats up, this one is kind of on the same all the time. I just think it's a big heat generator, but it's one of those rather interesting things. That's all I have. The only other thing I do have, I would say, please remember everybody to try to, before June 1st, get in your nominations for officers for the 2021-2022 term. And that's it for me.
Thanks very much, Howard. I appreciate it. And Adrian, you just joined us. Would you like to say anything to the group tonight?
Before we go to Adrian, can I do a joke for Howard?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if
Go
you
ahead,
don't
bro.
mind, I have a joke for Howard. So I was talking to my wife the other day, and I said, well, Howard's all sequestered up at Frito-Lay. And she said, does he have any dip? Honest to God, Howard, that was her reaction. And I said, I don't know, but so that's Cynthia, Howard. We appreciate what you're doing.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, over to Adrian.
Sorry, Adrian.
Over to
Okay.
Adrian. Adrian.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Good, very well.
Yeah. Okay, so a joke for the times. Grandpa, I thought a virus was only in computers.
Nice.
And
that's pretty good.
Somebody,
it's appropriate.
Somebody who wrote a book explaining COVID-19 to children. What is the title? What's with the toilet paper? Anyway, other than that, yes, I'm sorry I had to join late. I had 2 other Zoom meetings, a religious service and a Farah Radio Club meeting. Everybody wants to be on Thursday. Anyway, I have been following all of the correspondence, and I'm very glad to see that the Zoom Fest will be coming up. I did apply for a 5-minute slot. I will send in a slide, which, as I noted in one of my emails, that's what I was going to do before it was decided to have folders. And that is a slide with my name and address and number on it, etc., and a picture of the items. And I'm just going to do, actually, it's just one item. So I appreciate it, and I'm glad to see all the faces. Some I know very well, and some I don't. Some I hope to know. But other than that, that's about it.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I hope you will join us again. And let me see, who have I left out? John Comer, did I leave you out? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead, John.
I have something. Whenever I'm ready.
Well, I did bring one thing to show off, I guess. Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Can anyone hear me? Okay. I did pick up something on Sunday. I'm going to have to move my camera, though. And I'm going to give this a shot. I picked up a radio lamp made by the Radio Lamp Corporation of America. So I hope this works here. I'm going to move the off this here for a second. I don't know how to do this correctly. Get it so you can, no, I have to go this way. It doesn't, oh man, this is not, I don't know if you could see this, but this is, it's 25 inches tall and yeah, this is not working well. I should have planned this out a little better, but this is the Radio Lamp of America lamp, and this is a close-up of the
Oh, wow.
dial.
Cool.
And it's, I know, it's kind of funky. Awesome. It does work, which is shocking. And I picked it up at the home of an engineer. I'm sorry, I don't have enough cord to show it better. My apologies. Next time I'll try to do this one. I'll try to practice in advance. But it's about 25, 26 inches tall. And as I said, I picked that up just a few days ago. I'm going to put this back here.
Where's the speaker, John? Where's the speaker?
The speaker, actually, I didn't open it up, but it's either, hold on a second. This is hard. See where the, right? I'm going to put my fingers, let me see, right in this area. It's facing up just below the glass piece up here. It's facing up. It's in this area, right? I'm trying to look at the cam. Right in this area is the speaker, and it faces up. Down here, there's air vents for the tubes. So that's all I know. It does work, and the bulb works also.
It's pretty small. Does it have a resistive line cord, or does it have a transformer, do you think?
Oh, no, it's not a resistive line cord. This is, it's just a regular piece of zip cord the guy has on it. It's not original, of course.
You must have put a capacitor in it or something.
Yeah, I don't know what's in there.
How many tubes does it use?
I don't know. I have not opened it yet. I just got it the other day.
Next time you got to open it and show us the inside.
Oh, absolutely. I'll take photos, and now I'll have it presented better. It's just one of those last minute things I decided to do, and I'm trying to get the camera back here.
It's a standard 5-tube set.
Yeah.
But it used the earlier octagons in it. It's crammed right in that base pretty hard.
Yeah, it's a heavy item, but it just surprised me that it worked. It was from the home of an engineer where I've been picking up a lot of stuff, and I also, even though I never buy Catalans, I made a deal on one of those Feta bullet things, which I will get rid of because I never liked them.
Well, you can give it to me, John.
I know. No, but no, it's one of those harder to get color ones. It's the I think it's a greenish color, which and everyone wants the nice yellow one.
Okay, let me see. Did I miss anybody? If so, please raise your hand. Thank you all.
I don't think Adam's been able to go yet.
Adam,
I have
go ahead,
something to
Adam.
show.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Adam.
Okay, I'm up.
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody. Sorry I missed the last few Zoom meetings. Just got it set up on this computer. So yeah, we're all quarantined inside, and so for my quarantine project thus far, I decided to well, I said, I've looked around at things I've been thinking about getting for a while, and well, as some of you know, Heathkit, a company made all sorts of lovely kit products that probably some of us have built. Unfortunately, I'm a bit young for that. I wasn't able to, at least by the time I was growing up, they'd stopped offering kits and had pivoted to educational products. and eventually they went out of business, and someone bought the name and has actually put out a few kits under the Heathkit name. And facing who knows how long of quarantine, I decided to order one of said kits. Since I'm a bit of a time nut, I got this. I don't know if it's showing up. The most reliable clock. And it's, you buy the box and it's got all sorts of things in it. You got a little welcome letter saying, thanks for buying this product. And it's got one of their famous assembly manuals. You can see that. Product, information on it and various, pages about, how to put it together, check marks and all that. How it works, how to troubleshoot it, blah, blah, blah. And they got all these little packets inside that had all the parts and hardware and boards and, whatever in the AC adapter box. And, a few weeks ago, I think, I don't know, it's so hard to tell time these days. It finally showed up after 3 weeks after I bought it, so it was probably the middle of last month, and I put it together over a course of a couple of nights. And, unfortunately, it suffered a failure when I was putting, it put a set of backup batteries in it because they say to check to see if the low battery warning goes away, and it did. And then I'm taking the batteries out of it, and one of the batteries sprung forth, hit the display board, and next thing I knew, a couple of the digits on the display had died. And I contacted Heathkit, and I showed them pictures of what had happened, and finally they sent me a replacement for one of the chips, one of the 2 chips it uses. And it finally showed up today. I installed it, and this is the result. You see the low battery warning. And you see the lovely digital clock that you have to pay $100 friggin' to have the opportunity to build. And here's the back panel with all the setting switches and where the AC adapter goes in. And it really works pretty well, I think, for, it's a clock. I mean, you don't see a lot of 6-digit readout clocks these days. Most of them are 4-digit, and some of them even less, for the kits. Mostly I've seen 4-digit or less clocks.
Does that have an option for 12-hour versus 24?
Yes, it does. Okay. Yep, it has several different options. You press it, set alarm, the alarm on. You can turn the alarm on. You can set, right now it says set 12. If you press the select button, I think it'll switch to 24. It'll now say, there we go. Now it's 8 p.m. I like 24 hours, so that's what I go with. And so yeah, as I was saying, where is it now? Okay, yeah. So set 24-hour time. You can, I forget what some of these mean. I have to go through the manual. Calibrate for 60 hertz or 50 hertz if you're in overseas, and set the clock time itself and sync it up. It's a pretty good product overall. I mean, some of the assembly instructions are less than great. I mean, as I said, I think they really should have included an insulator between the back of the front display board and, for the battery compartment. It's basically you got 2 boards. You got one in the back along here. You got one in the back along here, and they're connected with a ribbon cable that goes underneath the battery box, which sits in the middle of the 2. And right around here, fortunately, I have the case closed up, and it's kind of a bit of a pain to get it open again, so I won't trouble you with that. But as I said, it's I put a piece of parchment paper along the back of the display board, and I think that should do the trick. I mean, like I said, even with the power off, I just for the heck of it, when I took pictures of it to show to Heathkit, or the representative from Heathkit, I prop one of the batteries up against the back of the battery compartment to show how it would have happened, and then as I was ever so carefully trying to take that battery away from where I had it propped up, it still managed to spring. No matter how it still sprung and hit the back of the board again. And even with fortunately the power was off, so it didn't actually burn anything else out. But I said something that they really should have thought of, I think.
Did they say if they were going to put the catalog out again? Adam?
As far as I know, right now they only have that I've seen. They have three kits, and you go to heathkit.com, and they offer. Let's see. I'll just I don't know. If we have time. I'll see if I can screen share the. Yeah, here we go.
While you're doing that, let me just raise one more issue before we shut down. First of all, Scott has just joined us, but I don't think he's completely in. I've had to do this in order of people checking in. I hope that's okay. If not, make comments on the reflector and we'll change things. The one last question I have for you all is, what would you like to have be the contest categories? The only thing I could come up with was the best radio and the best electronic item. Would people like to suggest other categories, or what do you think? Over to you, somebody, anybody. No comments? Do we just stay with the best radio and the best other item, electronic item?
Yep, I think that's great. You know, when you get too diversified, you're not going to get as many people to offer something. You say best radio and best non-radio vintage electronics. I'm good with that.
Okay, good. Adam, did you come up with any information yet?
All right, here we go. I'll see if I can screen share what I have on the screen here. Where is it? Oop, here we go. Is that showing up? I don't know how this
Not
whole
yet.
thing works. Yeah, here we go. Okay, is that working?
Yes.
So you got the on
Hey, Adam.
the most reliable clock. That's the one I built, and then they also have this Explorer Junior TRF AM radio, both in no solder and solder, and then they have a few different little tools and shirts and accessories for retrofit items for older Heathkit products, and like the temperature, the weather stations that Heathkit used to sell. They got the the wind gauge and all that stuff. And I said this is for one of their old tuners, and they got some books and tools and antenna items, shirts, and this ruler. So that's mostly what the modern Heathkit offers with regards to their. Oh, they have a few more products. Yeah, see, just like this is one thing that that I don't know if this is ever actually going to become a product of theirs. They've got the HM1002 precision RF meter, and look at the price they want for the thing. I mean that's kind of a rather large number. I can't imagine too many ham radio operators plunking down that kind of money for an RF meter unless it's something really, really special. And I mean, beyond the computer rendering shown here, I'm not really sure exactly what it would offer over products by Bird or other such companies. So, but hopefully this will catch on and they'll offer more products, because I like building kits, and as I've said, I grew up a little too late for the real Heathkit items. I mean, I've had a few of their kits that other people built, but I didn't have a chance to actually build them myself. So hopefully they'll be able to bring around some more products.
Okay, Adam, thank you. Thank you very much. Scott's still trying to connect. Any other comments before we shut down tonight? It's just been a wonderful meeting. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. I hope you'll enjoy the Phil Weingarten saga. And anybody else have anything to say? Okay,
Tom, just a comment to
Good for now. Thanks, Tom.
Tom, quick comment to Adam.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Adam, I've seen a number of people buy Heathkits disassemble them, and then reassemble them so you can get sort of the thrill out of it. And Tom, one night I'll sign up for about a 5-minute presentation, which will have some pictures and so forth. So when you're looking for one, let me know.
That's great. Thank you, Carl. I think that was Carl, right? Okay, good night,
Yeah,
everybody.
I've heard of that, Carl. I just have a, I said, I myself have one of their old capacitor checkers, which is in at least mostly unbuilt form, and I'm planning to actually build it at some point. Value loss be damned, because I want to build a real, honest to goodness Heath kit, that isn't well this. So,
Adam, you have an amateur radio license?
yes, I do. KB1YTN.
All right, send me an email to ab1yo@arrl.net, and I have something for you.
Okay, what is that? Send me it through the chat. I'll copy it down. Your address there.
Okay.
Yeah, just a comment, Adam. There are on eBay still some unbuilt kits. They're fairly expensive, but if you really want the thrill, my most recent one was about. I think it's just about 10 years ago. I found a 1975 engine analyzer kit, and I built it. The rotary switches, of course, required a lot of oiling, but it worked very fine. I had a TR6 at the time, and I needed a standard ignition tester. So, but it was a thrill, and I built a number of other kits back in the day too.
That's cool. I said I've seen the Heath kit, unbuilt Heath kits on eBay, and they are very high price usually. It's more than I don't know, maybe I mean, if I bought something like that, if it were complicated enough and expensive enough, I don't know if I'd be able to bring myself to build it. I mean, the most complicated unbuilt kit I have is an old Motorola. It was a 6800 trainer, and I found this at a yard sale. No, it was an estate sale being sold at a consignment store, like 5 or 6 years ago. And I said it was still in the original. It was like a binder with parts packets in it, and for all the the chips and the LEDs and resistors, capacitors, yada, yada, yada. And then there were a box with the boards that made up this two-board computer, technically. But I said, it's sitting in my garage. I have yet to bring myself to do anything with it. But it's one of those interesting contraptions that, I just locked into this stuff back, years ago, and I found a couple other unbuilt kits. I said the Heath kit trainer, I forget. No, it's a Heath kit capacitor checker. I forget what model, and then also one of the Night kit, CW code practice oscillators. I also have one of those in unbuilt form, and I said I'm hoping to build at least one or both of those, the Heath kit and the Night, so I can have the experience of actually building one of the old style kits, which, as I said, I've had to live vicariously through people who built them back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the 80s.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, Nels.
Thank you for joining. Come back again.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for a good meeting and handling everything excellently. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it was a great job.
Okay, I'm gonna close down then. Anybody else?
All right, just good night, everybody. Thanks for having me and putting up with my little presentation, which I threw upon the group at the last minute. So
very good, Adam. It was very nice.
Thank you. All right, good night, everybody.
73.
1-3.